you're on the other side of the continuum, which is really emotionally sensitive, then you're somebody who's really impacted by your emotions the second they start coming into your system, because you go into what's called a state of emotional distress or dysregulation. Every interaction that we're having, every emotional experience that we go through is basically a window of opportunity where we're able to tolerate the emotion and work with the emotion in a healthy way.
And so like what I'd like to do is just dive into so our first topic we're going to cover is personality styles and basically like how that works, what the pathology is of personality, how it's developed. Because I think that'll give us a better understanding moving forward and show one that we can actually start to roll out the layers of the onion and then get to other topics as well. We're going to cover coping mechanisms, trauma, addiction, mental health, like you said before, and then just roll that out. But I figured, unless we understand first how personality is formed and how you become the person that you are, which leads to the results that you give or get, I figured we could just walk through that first. So can you just walk us through basically what your findings were and what you've observed and what your practice has been about?
Yeah, sure. So, the fundamental principle that we want to start with is that all of your behaviors come from personality. There are a number of different ideas out there about what personality is, what it's made up from, where it comes from, how it manifests in our behaviors. But they all basically agree that everything we do comes from your personality. So all of your behavior patterns are activated as a result of your development of your personality. And so I personally work from two specific modalities when we start talking about the development of personality. One is called schema therapy, and the other is called internal family systems. So I'm not a purist in either of these, so I don't follow them religiously. I tend to draw from both models when it comes to working with clients, because I think there's no kind of black and white, one size fits all kind of model. So I like to pull from all different kinds of models to use all different types of skills and tools. But basically, personality is made up as a result of a number of different things. The first thing that we want to be aware of is the genetics that are involved in the development of personality. So when we're talking about this stuff, there's a lot of things that you are born with genetically. But when we're talking about personality, according to the schema therapy internal family systems model, the model that I work from, really there is only one thing that we're born with when it comes to the development of your personality, and that is your nature or your temperament. So temperament-wise, you can be kind of anxious or calm. You can be obsessive versus distractible. You can be passive versus aggressive. You can be shy versus sociable. But the big one that really comes into play when we start talking about addictive, obsessive coping mechanisms and mental health issues revolves around emotional sensitivity and non-reactive. So when we start talking about the temperament that people are born with, most of the people that I work with, when we start getting into those addictive, obsessive coping mechanisms, those behavior patterns that are creating problems in your life, they seem to be what's classified as a highly sensitive person. So what that means is that a highly sensitive person has, they're a lot more, their emotions impact them a lot more. So it's on a continuum. It's not black and white. It's not, it's not on or off. It's not I'm emotionally sensitive or I'm non-reactive. It's on a continuum with highly sensitive at one end of the continuum and non-reactive at the other end of the continuum. So if you're somebody that's very non-reactive to your emotions, you'd probably come across as being quite cold, being lacking empathy with other people, like no connection to how you feel. Very black and white about things in a non-emotional kind of way. If you're on the other side of the continuum, which is really emotionally sensitive, then you're somebody who's really impacted by your emotions the second they start coming into your system, because you go into what's called a state of emotional distress or dysregulation. So when you're in that state, when you're emotionally dysregulated, we're going to talk about this in another show, but you automatically go into what's called a state of fight or flight, because you're not able to deal with your emotions, which then starts to create this way of looking at the world that develops all these different stories that we have.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there that I kind of really identify with, the highly sensitive person. I've always been labeled as, oh, Chuck, you're so oversensitive, you're too emotional. And, my dad was in the Army. My mother was very, very stoic. My brother didn't really have any ability to be expressive. I was very extroverted. He's very introverted. So I really felt like I was the black sheep of the family. I still feel like I'm black sheep of the family.
Right.
But like the things that you've mentioned about being able to regulate your emotions, I just never had that. It's taken me years, and I'm still really learning on how to actually not be triggered, not to fly off the handle, as they say, not to lose my shit. And that was always been something that I feel has been indicative of my entire life. And it's always been a go-to, like a hammer as a tool. And I don't
Yeah.
have a screwdriver. I don't have a saw. That's the only thing I have. And anger. And those are the two things that I actually had. When you're talking about this type of personality and people like cementing where they feel they fit on the spectrum that you're saying, how are you able to have them identify for where they are on that, and then how they develop that personality side and how it works for them?
Yeah. So once people start to recognize, usually when I have an opening conversation with people, I'll put this premise to them that the vast majority of people that struggle with addictive or obsessive coping mechanisms fall somewhere on this continuum of being a highly sensitive person. Most people instantaneously go, "Oh God, yeah, that's me," because it gives an idea for why we have such a hard time coping with the emotion when it comes up for us. So I myself identify as being a highly sensitive person, much like you, Chuck. And the way that plays out is that inside of every interaction that we're having, every emotional experience that we go through, it's basically a window of opportunity where we're able to tolerate the emotion and work with the emotion in a healthy way. So if you think about it, somebody who is more on the non-reactive side of that continuum that I was talking about before probably has a window of tolerance that's kind of like this, right? So when their emotional experience is inside of that window of tolerance, they're able to cope with things, they're able to think things through rationally, think things through clearly, and react in kind of a healthy adult way to deal with those particular situations. Now, the further down the continuum you are of somebody who is a highly sensitive person, that window of tolerance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you're really, if you're on this side of the continuum, then the opportunity that you have to cope with the emotion when it comes up for you, and we're talking about things like guilt and shame or sadness or fear, loneliness, all these different kind of feelings that come into your system, particularly fear. When these emotions come into your system, then it takes you outside of that window of tolerance really quickly if that window of tolerance is quite small. Now, that window of tolerance is also influenced by a lot of other things. So if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not eating properly, if you're not exercising properly, if you aren't somebody that practices mindfulness, we're going to talk about all these things later on as well. But also if you're somebody who's experienced childhood trauma. So the more traumatic experiences you've had in your life, it makes that window even smaller. So it's a huge thing to understand that, when you go outside of this window of tolerance, it's very difficult for you to regulate your behaviors. And it often gives people an idea of why they do the things that they do. Hey guys, first of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the content. This particular chat was filmed as a part of the podcast series to support my good friend, Chuck Basti, and all the work he does as a mental health advocate at Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. If you want to see the full podcast or just see more of what Chuck does on his social media platform, check out his YouTube channel that's linked in the description below. When it comes to what's going on here, I am on a serious mission to make this platform profitable. Why? Because when I do, I am committed to making sure that every single penny of profit that's made from this YouTube channel goes back into serving the community that needs it most. So, as always, please like this video, leave a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to get all the latest content available right here at The Liberation Place. Come join us for our live online conversations every week. I'll put all the links in the description below, and let's get the word out there about living the life you want to live, not staying stuck in the life you're currently stuck in. Hopefully, see you soon.